So, um, so is everyone able to see the PPT at this point now?
Yeah, uh, it's not loading.
No.
Yeah, yeah, I can see now.
You can see now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So, just as a quick final test, can people please click on the YouTube link once and just see if that works, so that we know that everyone else is able to view.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
paste.
load. YouTube link that you have given me is loading. Yeah, I can see you there.
Okay, so okay, now you can close that and we'll start the session.
Okay.
Excellent. So, Om Sadashivasamārambhām Shankaraचार्यमध्यमाम् Asmadācāryaparyantāम् Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. So, welcome everyone. This is our second session of Dharmika Samvadaha. Actually, we had a session last week as well, but it was presented to a very limited audience just to get a hang of the technology side of things. And if that went well, our plan was to broadcast it more to more people publicly, including on YouTube. So, keeping that in mind, I thought I'll just give a quick recap of our previous session as well, where we discussed the topic of Puruṣārtha. So I think 7 or 8 people were there last time, and this time it's expected to have like close to over 100 or maybe even 200 people. I'm not sure. So just a brief overview. This is is everyone able to see the link correctly? The screen share.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So Swami Paramathananda ji has created a very nice syllabus, and he gives a talks on introduction to Vedanta. And so I've taken his outline to use as our presentation material over here, and just to cover the topics that he has covered in his own lecture series. So for starters, I hope nobody considers me as a teacher of anything of that sort, because I just consider myself a student who might be assisting in getting the word of our teachers out. But I don't, please just consider me a senior student, if you will, but nothing more than that. So, my job is to just present the material that my teachers have taught me, nothing more. So, having said that, let us look at the topics. So, there are 16 lectures overall, and they are divided into 2 broad categories. The first 8 lectures will be discussing an introduction to Dharma, just basic topics related to Dharma. The next 8 topics will be related to discussing Tattva Bodha, which is a scripture written by Adi Shankaracharya. So, if I quickly go over each of these topics one by one, Puruṣārtha are basically the human pursuits. What are the basic human pursuits in everyone's life? Śāstram discusses the different types of scriptures that are there. Like, you have the Vedas, you have the Puranas, and so on. The Varna Vyavastha will be a discussion on Varna, which is wrongly translated as caste system, though it is not to be seen that way. But we'll get to those details later. Ashrama Vyavastha are the fourfold divisions in one's life. So, you're a brahmachari, and then you go into the grihastha ashrama, then you move into the vanaprastha ashrama, and finally move into sannyashrama. So, the fourfold division of a human being's life is called ashrama vyavastha, and we'll be discussing that as well. Karma Yoga will be discussing the teachings of Karma Yoga as taught by Krishna Bhagavan in the Gita, but it will be a very compressed overview. So, if to put it plainly, Karma Yoga is basically the right action with the right attitude. You have things like Ishvara Prasada Buddhi, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi, so we'll get to that as well. Upasanas are basically the preparatory steps to discipline and bring about congruency in one's mind and in one's speech and in one's bodily actions. So it is an integrating set of exercises and set of techniques that constitute Upasana. Jnana Yoga is basically the teachings of Vedanta, and it is divided into 3 portions, where you have Shravanam, you have Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Shravanam is where you hear and listen to the teachers. Mananam is where you, after listening, if you go to a college as well, you'll probably have doubts arising. So Mananam is where you clear all intellectual doubts related to the teaching. And Nididhyasana is finally when you assimilate the teaching strongly. One quick request, like if people can like mute their mics, because I hear a lot of background traffic. Is it possible to mute the mics? Okay. So The next topic we have is Bhakti Yoga, which discusses the essentials of Bhakti. Now, once these basics are clear, you move into the introduction to the Tattvabodha. So, sadhana chatushtaya are the fourfold qualifications required for a student in order to be qualified for this teaching. So, if you have to do a PhD, you need a master's degree. If you have a master's degree, you need to do undergrad first. The same way, even a Vedanta student requires certain qualifications, and so the sadhana chatushtaya enlist the qualifications that will help you assimilate the knowledge well. Avasthatrayam is basically discussing the three states of existence. Sharira Trayam is basically discussing the three bodies. You have the Sthula Sharira, which is the physical body. You have the Sukshma Sharira, which is the emotional, mental body. And you have the Karana Sharira, which is the causal body. And Avasthatrayam discusses the three orders of existence, which is, Satyam, you have Mithya, you have Pratibhashikam, and so on. Atma is, of course, discussing the nature of the self, which is probably the most important topic, and everything else is centered around this topic itself, just to understand it very well. Shrishti is manifestation. We don't believe in a model of creationism. We believe that Ishvara manifests as a universe. There's no creation, because that's an illogical concept. Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam will discuss how the self is non-different from Ishvara. The truth of the self is the same as the truth of Ishvara. Laws of karma will be discussing prarabdha, sanchitam, and so on. And finally, in the end, we'll have a summary of all chapters. So this is going to be like the grand overview of whatever that is that we're going to study. I still hear a lot of background noise. If somebody can probably mute their mic, possible. Just a minute. Okay, that's better, I think. So we'll just move on to the next topic, the first topic rather, and just a quick overview of it. So last time we discussed the topic of Puruṣārtha. Puruṣārtha are the basic human pursuits, or not just human pursuits, but pursuits of any living creature. But here in specific, we are talking about humans. So every living creature in the world has something that they are pursuing. If you have a dog, it is still pursuing its basic needs, its basic securities, and so on. So, the first pursuit is artha, which is securities. Food, clothing, shelter, education, good health, and so on. These are all basic necessities that a person requires in order to survive. These are things that are required for his survival. So, whatever a person needs in order to exist, they come under the Artha Puruṣārtha. This may also include things such as procreation, to pass on your genes to the next generation, marriage, and so on. Because not only is your survival as an individual key, but your survival as a society also falls under the category of Artha. Then next you have Kama, which are pleasures. Every human being, after they've satisfied their basic pursuits of security, then they go and try to satisfy the pursuits of Kama, which are pleasures. So first you may be satisfied with riding a bicycle. Now you may want a car, or you may want a Mercedes or something luxurious as well. So to go after things which are not required but which make your life more comfortable and perhaps a little more enjoyable, these pursuits are karma based. They are not necessities, but they are wants. Just a moment, I still hear some mic. Okay. And lastly, so thirdly, dharma. I have not really given a translation of that because it cannot fit into one word. That's why I put an asterisk over here. So the dharma Puruṣārtha, it's not just a Puruṣārtha, but first we have to understand what dharma is. Dharma is the natural order of the cosmos, the very thing that upholds the entire universe. So, for instance, let's take an electron. An electron exerts a negative charge. So that is its dharma. The electron goes around the proton. It orbits around the proton. That is also its dharma. Gravity pulls upon you every day without relent. You have no choice over it. That is the dharma of gravity. That is the dharma of matter. The sun shines. That is the dharma of the sun. The cow eats grass. That is the cow's dharma. The lion eats the cow. That is the lion's dharma. So dharma is very contextual, but also dharma is the very natural order that is sustained. Now, it is very unique for a human being because a human being has a choice. The human being can either use or abuse his free will. We are endowed with free will. It is said that, ahara, bhaya, nidra, maithunancha. So these ahara, which is the pursuit of food, bhaya, which is fear, maithunamcha, which is procreation, and nidra, which is sleep. These four factors are common between humans and animals. But what sets a human being apart is his ability to follow dharma and to act upon his free will. So the human being is endowed with buddhi, which is intellectual prowess, intelligence, and this intelligence allows him to be able to act in a manner which other animals cannot. If you speak to a cow, it's not going to argue about the ethical advantages of eating grass as opposed to eating another animal. Same way, if you speak to a lion, it's not going to talk about ethics. It is its natural instinct. So the Artha and Kama Purusharthas are more or less instinct driven, whereas the Dharma Purushartha is something that you arrive at through your own free will. So, I can choose my diet, I can choose my way of living, I can choose the things I say, I can choose the things I do. To be able to make that choice between what is right and what is wrong, that constitutes dharma. So if I make a choice and I act in accordance with the natural order of the cosmos, then I am performing a dharmic action. If I go against the natural order of the cosmos, then it is adharma. So this is just a brief overview of what dharma is. Also, a lot of people wrongly translate dharma as religion, which is not to be seen that way. Dharma is not religion. Religion is a very limited construct. Dharma is far greater than that. Dharma is the very order of the whole Jagat, and religion is only a very small aspect of it. So, it would be very wrong for a person to identify as somebody who's religious. Um, Next, we have, of course, Moksha Puruṣārtha, which is the pursuit for freedom. Each of our other three Purusharthas, each of our other three pursuits are marked with a limitation. There are always limitations associated with everything else. The Moksha Puruṣārtha is what sets you free from these limitations. So, for instance, if you are pursuing your basic securities, let's say you want a house. Now, you'll think, okay, you have security. Then you'll need for that security, you need house insurance. Then you may need some other kind of insurance and so on. So, securities also come with a baggage. Same way, karma, if you pursue pleasures, you may buy a very expensive car tomorrow, but the car may break down and then you may again face some disappointment. Same way with dharma, even if you're doing something that is good, something that is righteous, it has its own limitations, and you will suffer if you aren't steeped well in knowledge. So the first three Purusharthas are essential to human life, but they come with limitations. Moksha Puruṣārtha aims to set you free from the limitations associated with the first three Purusharthas. Moksha is the pursuit for freedom. So we spoke about it in detail last time, so I won't really get much into that. The first three Purusharthas, if you see, I've categorized them over here as prayas. Prayas means the path of the pleasant. The first three Purusharthas, you may want to do certain things which may be pleasurable, but then they have the pros and cons associated with it. Shreyas is the path of the the path of the thing that is correct. It is universally acceptable. So, even in the Gita, if you study, Krishna Bhagwan imparts the teaching of Vedānta to Arjuna. And Arjuna says that, please give me the knowledge of Shreyas. I want to gain Shreyas. I have overcome the desire and so on. And now I want to know what is that ultimate knowledge which is going to set me free. So, prayas is things which are very contextual. There might be certain things which may make you happy, which may make somebody else unhappy. Pujya Swamiji jokes that, if a person is getting married to somebody and he divorces that person, then the first person is happy to let go of the person and the second person is happy to remarry that person. So the same object cannot give everybody the same amount of happiness. That is also very contextual. But Shreyas is that which is universally good. It is universally the right thing for everyone. And that is freedom from all sorts of limitations. So this is just a brief overview of what we talked about in detail last time. Are there any questions around this? Okay, so since there are no questions on this, we can move on to the next topic, which is Śāstram. So Śāstram basically translates to scriptures. You have Shas means to instruct and to teach, and Tram means to save. So Shāshanat Trayate iti Śāstram. That which saves a person through this instruction and teaching is called Śāstram. So when you are a child, your mother or your father begin with instructing you. They tell you what to do, what not to do, because you don't have the intellectual maturity to be able to choose on your own. So same way the scriptures, when you begin, it instructs you, certain do's and don'ts, that you must act in a certain way, you must not act in a certain way, you must do your nitya karmas, you must not do these prohibited karmas. So there are different vakyas, which are sentences or utterances given in our Shastras, which determine what are the things that we should do and we should not do. So this brings us to a certain amount of maturity and discipline, after which we are ready to understand the instruction, and then the teaching begins. So that's why Shastra is divided into instructional part and the teaching part. So, when we talk about Shastras, we invariably come across the Veda. And Veda arises from the Sanskrit dhatu. Dhatu means a root, which is vid. Vid means to know. So Vedas stands for knowledge. Whatever there is to know, that is what the Vedas are. Now, we come to the topic of a Rishi. A Rishi is one who's intuited the Vedas, but I'll get into detail later. But Rishiti Janati iti Rishihi, the one who sees, knows, is a Rishi. And Vedas are aparushya. They are not created. They are not written. They are not authored by any man. They are intuited by the Rishis, and they are received. They are received knowledge. So the very cosmic blueprint, per se, contains the knowledge that is already present. The Rishis, their minds are so sattvic that they are able to tap into it very well. So this is what the Vedas are, and they are aparushya. That is uncreated, unauthored by man. Now we come to the, are there any questions around the Vedas? Just overall. Sorry, somebody's trying to say something, I can't hear. Okay. So now we come to the topic of Pramana. Pramana is a means of knowledge. So anything that you have to know in the world around you, you have to know it through a Pramana. You have to know it through some means of knowledge. So the first Pramana that we talk about is Pratyaksha Pramana. Pratyaksha Pramana are the five senses. You have the sense of sight, you have the sense of smell, you have the sense of taste, the sense of touch, and the sense of hearing. So these are the five senses. These are five conduits through which you can know the world around you. All these five senses put together fall under the category of Pratyaksha Pramana, which is a means of knowledge known through your senses. The next means of knowledge we have is Anumana, which is inference. So, for instance, there are certain things which you may not be able to directly perceive with your senses, but you're still able to make a sensible inference. Where there is smoke, there is fire. You don't necessarily see the fire, but when you see smoke, you can infer that there is fire. And so this sort of inference is called Anumana, which is the second means of knowledge that we have. The third means of knowledge is Arthapatti, which is it is a presumption. So it is a multiple set of inferences, or multiple sets of Anumana put together, which constitute Arthapatti. So, for instance, let's say, Amit ji comes over to my place every day, and we sit and we discuss the Vedas. And he doesn't eat any food at my place. He comes in the daytime, he goes back at night. I think somebody has difficulty hearing. Just a minute. Um, are you able to hear now? Can you unmute your mic, Amit ji? Somebody has muted everyone else. I don't know how that happened. Okay. Uh, yeah. Please, whoever cannot hear, please rejoin. So, okay. So, getting back to Arthapatti, that is a double or a triple or a quadruple and so on inference. So, for instance, I was just saying that Amit ji, if he comes over to my place, and he comes in the daytime, he goes back at night, he doesn't eat any food. And every day I weigh him on the weighing scale, and his weight is constant. So I draw a double inference here. The first inference is that in order to maintain your weight, you need to eat food. And in order for your, if you're not eating food at my place, you must be doing so when you go back home. So that kind of a means of knowledge is called Arthapatti, which is a presumption or a double or a triple inference. The next piece of knowledge we have is Upamana, Upama, which is knowledge through comparison. So, for instance, let's say you've seen a lot of buffaloes in your life if you've been living in India, And then I invite you to my place in US, and I say that, hey, there's an animal over here. It's called a bison. But but then your next question is, how do I recognize it when I see it? And so I tell you that, if you imagine that there's a buffalo, and then imagine that he's very hairy, and the buffalo with a lot of hair is a bison. So you come to US and you see this animal, and you see a buffalo which looks like a buffalo, but it's really very hairy. And so you're able to identify that as a bison. So over here, you've done two things, which is very subconsciously done, but it's a two-step process. The first is that you visualize a bison. Second step is you visualize a lot of hair, and then you superimpose the hair upon the bison, or hair upon the buffalo, and then you draw the inference that, hey, this is a bison. So this kind of inference is called upamana. The next kind of pramana is called anupalabdhi. Anupalabdhi is knowledge through the absence of cognition of something. So this is very important. Like for instance, let us say I appear in front of you, and I tell you that I am not holding a pot. So first, what happens is your mind cognizes a pot, then it cognizes the absence of it, that I am not holding one, and then it infers that, hey, there is no pot that he is holding. So that statement forms a means of knowledge. And finally, can anybody participate and tell me what means of knowledge can you use for knowledge of dharma, knowledge of atma, knowledge of moksha, knowledge of swarga, the different players? What is the means of knowledge that we can use here?
Well, we can use pramana, pratyaksha.
You cannot use pratyaksha because, for instance, if I'm looking at, let's just take two pratyaksha pramanas, your sight and your hearing, right? I cannot hear the theory of karma from somewhere unless it is there. Like, how do I infer that there is something called karma? How do I infer that there is something called moksha? How do I infer that there is something even called atma? How do I infer that there is something called Ishwara? It's not possible. So if I take pratyaksha pramana, my senses do not go towards that. If I take anumana, I cannot draw an inference. Like where there's smoke, there's fire. I cannot draw such an inference to understand the atma. Same way, arthapati, I cannot draw presumption. I cannot presume the atma. I cannot compare, I cannot use upamana, I cannot make a comparison like the buffalo and the bison. I cannot compare anything to the Atma. Same way, Anupalabdhi, I cannot compare the Atma to the absence of something because the fact that I am implies that there is something, there is Atma. But what I am, I do not know. So I need to go to a next means of knowledge, and Dilip has actually given the answer on the side, which is correct. It is Shabda. Shabda, which is the means of knowledge, Shabda is the word of the Vedas. Shabda here means Shabda Pramanam, which is the teaching of the Vedas. So now again I'll touch back a little bit on this portion, this slide. The one who sees, the one who knows is a Rishi. And the Vedas are approached here. Every other work is authored by people, by human beings. But the Vedas themselves are intuited, they are divine, they are received, they are divine teachings which are always present in the very blueprint of the universe, but they are received by these rishis. These rishis are, highly sattvic beings who are able to tap into this knowledge, into this source, and whatever they are able to intuit, they recite, and that forms the mantras of the Vedas, and that is why we hold the Vedas to such a on a high pedestal, because the teaching of the Vedas are not created by anyone; they are just divine and intuitive. So this is what forms the Shabda Pramana. Teachings of the Atma, teachings of Karma, teachings of Jnanam, teachings of Upasana, and all of these things that are required cannot be gained from any other source except through the teachings of the Vedas. And that is why Vedas are called Aparushaya, and they are also called the means of knowledge. That's why, here I put Vedas as a Pramana, it's a means of knowledge. Now, so is this clear so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to actually look at the main portion of this talk. This was just an overview. We're going to look at the set of scriptures that we have. And pardon me if this is not very symmetrical. I tried my best. So Śāstram, of course, is scriptures. And we have 7 categories, 7 rungs, 7 divisions of Shastras. The most important, the first and foremost is always the Vedas. Everything else has been derived. Vedas is like the mothership where you go to. Whatever knowledge that is there in our tradition, it is all derived within the context of the Vedas. Everything else expands, elaborates, unfolds the teachings of the Vedas, but the Vedas are the main source. If there is anything else that is in contradiction with what the Vedas say, then there are 2 things you can do. The first thing is you either reject it, or even better, you try to interpret it keeping the teachings of the Vedas in mind. So if you see a statement in some other Shastra, which appears to reject what the Vedas say, then your job would be to try to reconcile the teachings, keeping the vision of the Vedas in mind. So the Vedas are called Shruti. Shruti is that which is heard. And here, when we talk about hearing, we are talking about the intuited portion. So Vedas are heard by the rishis, they are received by the rishis, they are known and divine and intuited by the rishis, and therefore it's called Shruti. Another word, Shruti and Vedas are synonymous. You can use them either way. Now, the Vedas are divided into four. There's a story. I don't know how many are aware, but initially the teachings of the Vedas were only one. There was one Veda, that's it. But then, over time, as the advent of time progressed, people could not really memorize the Vedas any longer because they were so voluminous. And so, for the benefit of mankind, for the benefit of society and the upcoming generations, Vyasa decided to divide the Vedas into four portions, depending upon the topics and the categories. So, the Vedas form four portions, which is you have the Rig Ved, which are consisting of Rig mantras. You have the Yajur Ved, which are consisting of Yajur mantras. You have the Sama Veda, which are consisting of Sama Ganam. And you have the Atharvana Veda, which is consisting of mantras written mainly by Atharva and Angiras Rishi. So let me just expand or try to explain the different categories. The Rig Veda are metrical compositions. They are presented in poetic form and they are called Padya. So they are metrical and they are very poetic. The Yajur Veda are called Yajur mantras, which are presented in prose form, and they are prose. They are not poetic. They are called Gadya Rupena in prose form. The Sama Veda consists of Sama mantras, which are sung. So they are called Ganam. They are not called mantras, but they are called Ganam because the Sama Veda is sung. It's not chanted. And finally, you have the Atharvana Veda, which are the teachings of the Vedas. Mainly intuited by Atharvana Rishi and Angiras Rishi. So, just a moment. Yeah, so that is what the Atharvana Veda consists of. Now, it's very interesting to understand the Samaveda because not many people are aware, but as a digression, the theory of music, the whole teaching of music arises from the Samaveda. The first three, the Rig, Yajur, and Atharvana Veda have three swaras. You have Ni, you have, I think, Sa, and if I'm not mistaken, I think you have Pa. So these are the three swaras which consist of the other three Vedas. So for instance, just take a mantra from Rig Veda, which is the Rudram. Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya. So you could see that they were a little up and down in my chanting, and this is what you call a swara. So when a person is chanting the Veda as opposed to chanting any other shlokas, you will always find an inflection point which is going up and down. And these are the swaras. They are in different pitch. So the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, and the Atharvana Veda, they have three swaras. The Sama Veda has 7 swaras. Can anybody name the 7 swaras? Exactly. Sa, Re, Ga, Ma. Exactly. Those are the 7 swaras, and these arise from the Samaveda. They were born from the Samaveda. Now, just as a digression, because this is very interesting, and I'm going to be performing in one of these concerts in November. So, I was actually told this by the teacher. He said that the Samaveda is the source of all music. From Samaveda, there's a scale of music called the Drupad scale, which arises, and the Drupad form of music split further into Carnatic music and Hindustani music. So initially the music was in the form of Drupad, where the ragas and the swarams and so on evolved. The swarams were taken from the Samaveda, and now Carnatic music is more known in the south, and Hindustani music is more known in the north. Hindustani music has a lot of influence of the Mughal culture. There are like tablas and all which are Mughal instruments which you use. So Hindustani music had to actually borrow a lot of elements of Mughal culture in order to exist, because otherwise we would not be able to be there. They would wipe us out. But that's a digression. So Carnatic music and Hindustani music arise from Drupad, and Drupad arises from the Samaveda. So all forms of music arise from Samaveda, which is pretty interesting. Now, each of these 3 Vedas, or each of the 4 Vedas, are divided into 4 sections. So here it is not very clear, but the mantra, the Brahmana, the Aryanika, and Upanishad belong to all 4 Vedas. It's not just Yajur, but I didn't want to draw so many arrows. It would just be very cluttery. So the mantra portion of the Vedas are mantras which are you know in praise of Bhagwan. So anytime you start a work, you have to start with a prayer. It's called a Mangalacharan. Today also we started with Sadashiva Samarambham. So if you don't have a Mangalacharan, it is not considered auspicious. You are always praying to Bhagwan for the successful completion of whatever you start. And that is what constitutes a Mangalacharan, a prayer. So the Rig Veda, the mantra portion of all the Vedas consists of mantras, of course. Then you have the Brahmana portion. You have the Aryanaka portion and you have the Upanishadic or the Vedanta portion. So, we'll get more into detail in this in the future. But there are three layers of ignorance that a person has. You have the three types of malams. First is like the gross malam, second is like the mental projections, and the third is ignorance. So the Brahmana portion is more related to Karma Yoga Pradhanam. Don't worry, this is just an overview. We are actually going to see each topic in detail in the subsequent talks. So the Brahmana portion of the Vedas deals with Karma Yoga. The Aryanaka portion of the Vedas deals more with Upasana Yoga. And the Upanishadic portion of the Vedas deals with Jnana Yoga, or the knowledge. So as you can see, the Vedas can roughly be divided into two parts. Very roughly. One is the Karma Kanda and the other is the Jnana Kanda. The Karma Kanda are, do's and don'ts and instructions and teachings and what is dharma, what is adharma. These are the teachings of Karma Kanda. You have rituals, you have yagnas, you have stotrams, you have suktams. All the chanting, all these portions are related to Karma Kanda. If you have to perform a ritual in order to gain an offspring, which is called the Putra Kamishti Yagna, which King Dasharatha performed to beget 3 children. That was 4 children, sorry, 3 wives, 4 children. That was the Putra Kamishti Yagna. Then there is another Yagna called the Karili Yagna, where farmers, if they are facing a drought, then this is invoking the rain. And so that is the Karili Yagna. So all of this portion is called the Karma Kanda, which is present in the first half of the Vedas. And the first half of the Vedas constitute the mantra, the Brahmana, and the Aranyaka. Finally, as we talked about earlier, the Shastras are dealing with instruction and teaching. So the first 3 portions of the Vedas deal with instructions, that they tell you what to do basically. The Vedas are very generous. Shankaracharya compares them to a mother, because the mother is so generous that whatever you need, you get from your mother when you're a child. Same way, whatever you need, you get from the Vedas. So, if you're looking for prosperity, you can pray. If you're looking for a path towards dharma, you can pray for it. If you're looking for even moksha, you can pray for it. So the Vedas offers you whatever you need. If you need securities, you pray for it. If you need pleasures, you pray for it. You have yagnas for it. You have different upasanas for it. If you want mental peace and purity, of course, you go to upasana yoga, you gain chitta shuddhi, and you prepare yourself for jnanam. So this is what the Vedas are. Now the karma portion of the Vedas is the Karma Kanda. The Jnanam portion of the Vedas is the Jnana Kanda, which is the Upanishads of Vedanta. A lot of people wrongly translate Vedas as the end of knowledge, that there is nothing else to gain after Vedanta, which is true in a sense, but Vedas are a categorical portion. Veda plus Anta. Anta means the end, the last portion, and Vedas Vedas. So the last portion of the Vedas are called Vedanta, and in our subsequent talks we will be mainly discussing the teachings of Vedanta. Amit Sharma ji has asked a question over here, so I'll just read it out. Who is the author of the Vedas? Some say Brahma, some say Rishis, some say Shāsvat with no origin. Some say that it has evolved over a period. So what is the absolute truth over here? Very interesting question. As I said earlier, there is no author of the Vedas. Vedas are not authored. If I author something, it is coming from my mind, it is coming from my experience, it is coming from my memories, it is coming from my intellect. So the teachings of the Vedas are not born in any one person's intellect or in one person's mind. The teachings of the Vedas are there, they are out there, they exist, but they are simply intuited by the rishis. So I'll give you an example, just to make it more relevant to our modern times. Everybody knows the story of Newton and the apple that fell down from the tree, right? The apple fell and suddenly he thought that there is something called gravity. So Newton did not invent gravity, he did not create gravity, gravity always existed. But all he did was he understood it. He saw the apple falling and it kind of hit a chord in his mind and hit a note, and he was able to describe what it is. So same way, whatever is present in the Vedas is already out there. It is a truth. It is a fact. It is the way that the universe works. If you have the laws of karma, it is just like the law of gravity. Gravity exists whether you understand it or you don't understand it. If Newton didn't understand gravity, it doesn't mean that you'll all be flying in space. Earth will still pull you down. Same way, if the rishis did not intuit and explain the Vedas, they would still be there. The teachings would always be valid. Karma yoga would be valid, jnanam will be valid, everything will be valid. But the only difference is that the rishis intuited the truth, whereas somebody else may have authored it. That's all. So that is why the teachings of the Vedas cannot be substituted by anything else. There is no substitute for the Vedas. Whatever is in the Vedas is only in the Vedas. Knowledge of the Atma cannot be gained anywhere else. Knowledge of Swarga, Indra, Brihaspati, Agni, it's not anywhere else.
बस यार some online session which I'm attending actually.
Hello? Huh. So,
हाँ बस
so,
पढ़ रही हूँ पहले.
so the next question was some say Rishi, some say Shashwat. Yes, this can be seen in two ways. The Vedas are Shashwat. Shashwat means eternal. The knowledge present within the Vedas are eternal, but the words may not necessarily have to be eternal. And this may not be a very traditional approach, but it is what it is. Let's say you are a rishi, right? And the contemporary language in your times must be Vedic Sanskrit. And so anytime you intuit an idea, anytime you gain an idea, you are able to express it in the language that you are most familiar with. And so that is what what you mean by Shashwat. So the knowledge is always present. The knowledge is always there. The law of karma is ever applicable. Even in the Stone Age it was applicable. Even when the universe was not manifest, it was applicable. But only the human being is you can say the vessel who is able to understand this. And the rishis are the receivers. They receive the so-called quote radio signals of the Vedas, which is not exactly to be seen that way, but it's a way to understand. So. Yeah, so in short, the knowledge of the Vedas are eternal, but the words that convey this knowledge may not necessarily be eternal, because the rishis were born in different times. Some rishi may be born 5,000 years ago, somebody may be born 6,000 years ago. So the words that they intuited are in the present language that they are familiar with, but the knowledge is eternal. I hope that clears the question. So it's a very good question, and thank you for asking. So is everybody clear about the Vedas overall? Okay. So then we move on to the next rung of literature, which is called a sutra. Sutra literally means to thread. It's something that threads together. So I guess you might have heard of the English words suture, suture, to thread. Like, if you have stitches, if a doctor is stitching something, if you have an injury and the doctor puts stitches, they call sutures. If you're threading something together, they are also called sutures. So this word comes from sutra. Sutra means to thread things together in a very logical and a very understandable fashion. Now, one example of sutras is the most famous Brahma Sutra. So sutras are aphorisms. They are like, if you study medical sciences, you might know what mnemonics are, right? So in order to know mnemonics, you need to know what it's talking about. So in order to understand the sutra, it is very condensed, it is very compressed. The sutra does not go into elaborate details. It already expects you to have known the details earlier, but the sutras kind of jog your memory. It kind of reminds you of whatever is already out there in a very concise form. So, for instance, you have the first Brahma Sutra called Om Athato Brahma Jignasa. These are just a couple of syllables long. But, Pujya Swamiji has given a talk which is literally, I can say, he's given 25 talks only on this one sentence, one sutra. Because there is so much detail compressed into it. Now, for a person who has no exposure to Vedanta, the sutras are meaningless. It's just something that you remember, but it will not have any relevancy. So, the sutras are brief aphorisms, and as I hinted upon earlier, the Vedas were revealed across different times and across different regions. Not every rishi may be born in the same place. Not every rishi may be born in the same time. And so this different knowledge was put together as one conglomerate, as one whole, as one consolidated form of the Vedas. Further, Vyasa divided the Vedas into 4 for our convenience, so that we can remember it for progeny. But even after dividing it, the Vedas are very voluminous. There are more than 20,000 verses in the Vedas. So there will be a certain family which will learn the Rig Veda. There will be a certain family which will pass down the Yajur Veda. There will be a certain family passing down the Sama and Atharva Veda. So if your family, every family in the Hindu culture has a lineage. And so you may fall into one of these families. You may fall into the Rik Shaka, you may fall into the Yajur Shaka, you may fall into the Sam Shaka, you may fall into Atharva Shaka. For instance, I am from the Yajur Shaka. And so it is my duty, my responsibility to learn the Yajur Veda. It is somebody else's responsibility to learn a different Veda. I cannot do all of them. So, it is essential for everybody to follow their own Shaka so that they can pass it down to the next generation. But even these, once you've learned that, you can't remember everything instantaneously. And so in order to put all the different disparate teachings of the Vedas together into one consistent whole, you have the sutras. And this is what the sutras do. They put the Vedas, which are not very organized, together in an organized fashion. The rishis intuited the Vedas. The sutras are composed by the rishis themselves. The sutras are not aparushaya. The sutras are composed. The sutras are composed with the intention of clarifying the teachings and putting it into codified form. So that is what a sutra is. The Smriti expands upon the sutras and the teachings of the Vedas. So here, if you notice a pattern, everything comes from the Vedas. Everything tries to either organize the Vedas or to expand upon it. So the Smritis are things which are remembered. So Shruti means what is heard, and Smriti means what is remembered or what is recalled. So the Smriti is a recollection, a remembrance of the teachings of the Vedas, which are again organized and expanded upon. So, if you have a Vedic, I'm just giving an example. If you have a Vedic sentence or a mantra which is one sentence long or one verse long, the Smriti may expand upon that in 10 verses, just to give more clarity. So, some of the famous Smritis we have are Manu Smriti, and even Bhagavad Gita is considered a Smriti, because though we hold it to the level of the Vedas in terms of the knowledge that it presents, it is actually a Smriti, because even Krishna Bhagavan says in the Gita that whatever I am teaching is nothing new. It is not anything else that has not already been taught before. Whatever I teach is already there in the Vedas. That is what Bhagavan is also saying. So that's why the Gita is also a recollection, a remembrance of the teachings of the Vedas. So that is the topic of Smriti. Next we have the Itihasa. Itihasa are historical epics, and perhaps if Karthik Bhai is listening and is able to respond, he could give you the breakdown of what Itihasa means. Karthik Bhai, are you there? Okay, I think the microphone might be muted. So let me just get into that. So Itihasas are historical epics. They are actual occurrences which have taken place in time. For instance, the Ramayana or the Mahabharata. But there is a caveat over here. The Itihasas are, at the end of the day, they are poems. And every poet has some liberty to exaggerate. That exaggerative liberty is a poetic liberty. We cannot take that away from them. So, for instance, if you read the Ramayana, yes, there was a character called Ram, there was a character called Ravan. But if somebody says that Ravana had 10 heads, it is not to be taken literally. It is to be understood as exaggeration. And Pujya Swamiji says that the 10 heads represent his conflicted personality. He was such a conflicted person. He had so many different personalities within one person that he was always confused. He was the son or the grandson of a rishi, Pulastya rishi. So, he was a Brahmana. He was playing the role of a Kshatriya as a king. He had the qualities of a Rakshasa. So he was living as a Rakshasa, and he was always confused. He knew what is Dharma, but he couldn't follow it. He knew what is Adharma, but he couldn't let go of it. Whatever Ravana did was a bundle of contradictions. So even when he kidnapped Sita, he knew that it was wrong, but still he did it. He knew that Rama is a great person, but still he wanted to fight a war. So, this conflicted personality of Ravan represents the 10 heads, and that is not to be taken literally. So, just for example, Ramayana has 24,000 verses. The Mahabharata has 100,000 verses. If I had to give you 100,000 verses of pure fact, I don't think you could go beyond like a few hundred. You would just get bored. So this poetic liberty is in place in order to make the teaching more meaningful to you, to make it more pleasant and to make it more enjoyable for your experience. So that's why the Itihasas are poems which are based upon historical truths with some liberty to exaggerate. So, if a person calls it mythology, that is not correct. It is not mythology, it is historical, but there are some elements which may be exaggerated. That is how you understand it. The next rung of literature is the Puranas. Now over here, the Puranas, they are certainly not historical. They are, if you have the teachings of the Smritis, which are like tenfold the teachings of the Vedas, the Puranas might expand upon it hundredfold. And this takes the form of colorful stories and it takes the form of colorful events. So it tries to make the teachings of the Vedas accessible to a broader audience, to make it relatable to everybody in the forms of story. The Puranas are certainly stories. I will not go so far to say as they were historical epics. So some of the famous Puranas are, of course, everybody knows the Bhagavata Purana, where you have the exploits of Krishna Bhagwan right from childhood till adult stage. So the Bhagavad Purana is possibly the most famous Purana. You have the Shiva Purana, you have the Padma Purana, and so on. There are countless Puranas, but 18 of them are the most popular ones. And the Puranas are also composed by Ved Vyasa for elaborating upon the teachings of the Vedas and to make it colorful and to also appeal to an audience that cannot absorb the raw knowledge of the Upanishads. So I forgot to mention that Ramayana, of course, is composed by Valmiki and Mahabharata is composed by Vyasa. So that covers the topic of Purana. Next we have Bhashyas. A Bhashya literally means a commentary. Now, as it is pretty self-explanatory that when you write a commentary upon something, it is to expand, to explain, to clear, to consolidate some teaching. So, Ved Vyasa Sutras and Sri Shankaracharya wrote a commentary upon the Brahma Sutras, which is called the Brahma Sutra Bhashya. So each sutra will have a commentary, and in order to write a commentary, you need to be very qualified, first of all. Not just anybody can pick up a pen and start writing a commentary. You need to do pada analysis, the analysis of the entire sentence. You need to do analysis of the word. You need to do a vakya analysis, analysis of the entire sentence. You need to analyze the entire work. You need to analyze the entire teaching of the Vedas. You need to be able to place everything in context with each other. So, if I can just attempt to explain the first Brahma Sutra, it says Om Athatu Brahma Jignasa. Om Atha, these are the utterances by Brahmaji before the creation or before the manifestation of the world. So Om and Atha are Mangala Suchaka. They are auspicious utterances. Athatu Brahma Jignasa. So now, therefore, an inquiry into Brahman. And this is very interesting because what does it mean to start a work saying now, therefore? Like now, therefore what? That begs the question. And so, like I said, a sutra already presupposes that you have a certain amount of knowledge. The sutra only helps you recollect it like a mnemonic, like an aphorism. So Shankaracharya writes the commentary that now, therefore, stands for the fourfold qualifications that are required for you to pursue the study of Vedanta. You need Nitya Anitya Vastu Vivekaha, you need Vairagyaha, you need Shat Sampatis, you need Mumukshutvam. So he writes a very elaborate commentary upon this, and this is what a Bhashya comprises of. Now, within Bhashyas, you have other forms. You have like a commentary. You have a commentary upon a commentary, which is called a Vartika. So as you can see over here, the Vartika takes a Bhashya, it takes a commentary, and it writes a commentary upon that commentary. So, if Shankaracharya is the most famous Bhashyakara, Bhashyakara means a commentator, then his student, Sureshwaracharya, was the most famous Vardikara. So Sureshwaracharya would take the commentaries of Shankaracharya and he would write commentaries upon that. So they are called sub-commentaries. That's a Vatika. Then you have Tikas. Tikas is more like it's glossing over a certain work and is addressing certain topics. So it is again a sub-commentary, a category of sub-commentary. A Karika is taking a work and writing an independent work based on that. So the Karika, the most famous Karika, I suppose, is Gaudapada's Mandukya Karika. So there is an Upanishad we have called the Mandukya Upanishad, and Gaudapada wrote a Karika, an independent work explaining the verses of the Mandukya Upanishad in the form of a Karika. This is what a Karika is. And by the way, Gaudapadacharya was Shankaracharya's Guru's Guru. So Shankaracharya's Guru was Bhagavatpada Acharya and his Guru was Gaudapadacharya. And then finally you have Tippani. Tippani are like, you can say, they're footnotes. So they'll take a certain concept and you'll write footnotes upon these commentaries and so on. So they constitute the Tippanis. Now, so we covered Shruti, we covered Sutra, we covered Smriti, we covered Itihasa, Purana and Bhashyas. the final rung of literature is the Prakarana. Well, there should have been a Prakarana Grantha, but the Prakarana Granthas constitute anything that explains upon a certain concept. And it may even be penned by your Acharya today. So if you have an Acharya and he writes an independent work, you can consider that a Prakarana Grantha. Our Prakarana Grantha is very rich, it is very vast. I've just listed a couple of works, but there are countless of these. So this very text that we are going to cover, Tattva Bodha itself, is a Prakarana Grantha authored by Shankaracharya in order to put the teachings of Vedanta into context. So Tattva Bodha is one Prakarana Grantha, Viveka Chudamani is another, Drik Drishya Viveka is another, and so on. There are countless Prakarana Granthas. So Tattva Bodha that we are studying is a Prakarana Grantha. So this covers basically the topic of Śāstram. Does anybody have any questions? We have like 10 or so minutes left, so we can maybe have a discussion for 10 minutes.
Okay, I have a question. Can
Yes.
I ask?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So the Vedas are being given by the rishis, or like it's been transported through generations to generations, like it's passed down, right? So
Yes.
in the Vedas, the way it is written, like it is written in Sanskrit, right? The means of given in the Vedas will be Sanskrit, right? So
Yes.
there will be different meanings to a particular word. Like there will be one literal, suppose word, there will be a literal meaning to it, and there will also be underlying meaning or the implied meaning to it.
Yes.
According to the context. So can you give one example of such thing, just to be clear, because not everyone will understand the Vedas in the same context in which it is implied to be passed.
That's actually a beautiful question, and I'm not sure if every live viewer can hear it, so I'll just repeat what Unnati has asked, and it's a wonderful question. She's inquiring that, the Vedas, some people may not interpret it in the same way. Different people will have different interpretations. Some of these interpretations, are they to be taken literally, or are some of these figurative? Do some of them have implied meaning, or do they have explicit meaning? Am I understanding your question correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so absolutely. You have this is called Vachartha. Vachartha is a direct meaning, or an explicit, clear meaning that is to be taken the way it is presented. That is called a Vachartha. The second type is called a Lakshartha. Lakshartha means an implied meaning. So I'll give you an example in English, and then I'll give you an example from the Vedas. So suppose I attend a horse race, I attend a derby, and I say that I want to buy 5 tickets, right? Or I want to buy 5 tickets to bet on this horse. That is a direct statement. I'm not implying anything. I give a statement, and the cashier gives me whatever I'm looking for, the tickets, and I pay my money. Now, when I'm watching the race, I see that there are a bunch of horses running, and I say, hey, the white is winning, the white is winning, the white is winning. Now, somebody who doesn't have the context, they're like, this guy's crazy. What does he mean by white is winning? But then a person who's watching the race knows that, hey, I'm talking about the white horse. And so when I say the white is winning, I'm implying that it is the horse. It is supposed to be understood. So there is a context involved. So whenever you have an implied meaning, one has to understand the context behind it. Or, Swamiji gives another very good example. Suppose I'm coming home with a whole bunch of groceries, right? And you're my wife, so you're married, and we're married, and you are at the door, and I just say door when I'm carrying these groceries in my hand. So you'll open the door, right? Because you'll help me open it because my hands are not free. So I said door, and you knew that the implied meaning was open the door. Now when I enter the house, I'll say door again, and this time you'll close the door. So my first meaning of door meant that you should open it. The second meaning meant you should close it. And so this was a Lakshartha. So it was to be understood contextually. Now let's take an example for the Vedas. I'm not sure how many are aware, but there's a sukta, beautiful sukta, which is called the Purusha Sukta. The Purusha Sukta unfolds the entire glory of Ishvara in the form of a very, very poetic way. So, it says Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha. This Purusha, this Ishvara, has 1,000 heads. Sahasraksha Sahasrapat. So he has 1,000 hands and he has 1,000 eyes. Now hardcore logician may find something wrong in the sentence. Even if he's ready to accept that Ishvara has 1,000 heads, he'll wonder that if he has 1,000 heads, he should have 2,000 hands and he should have 2,000 eyes. So how can he have 1,000 heads and 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes, right? I mean, it's a little stupid. So it is to be understood when you say Sahasra Shesha Purusha, that Ishvara has 1,000 heads, means that every single head, every single creature, every single entity that is out there is only Ishvara. Every single eye, every single thing that is known, everything that is unknown, everything sense of perception, whatever that is there is Ishvara. So this is the symbolism. This is the Lakshata behind the Purusha Sukta. So you have a direct meaning. When I say Tattvamasi, you are that Brahman. This is a direct meaning. There's no implicit statement here. A lot of schools of thoughts have corrupted this teaching. I'm not going to actually. I probably shouldn't even discuss it, but Tattvamasi is as direct as it can be. You are Brahman. There is no contradiction there. There is nothing to be inferred over there. There's nothing to be implied over there. Aham Brahmasmi. That is a very direct meaning. Tattvamasi, that's very direct meaning. Prajnanam Brahma. I am consciousness. That is a very direct meaning. But when I say, oh, Ishvara has 1,000 heads, Ishvara is so glorious, Ishvara is so this and so that, these are implied meanings. They are implicit, they are Lakshata. So our Vedas have both Vachyata as well as Lakshata. The Vachyata and Lakshata both are to be unfolded by the Guru. And I'm really grateful for you to bring this topic up because I forgot to mention one portion. And now it gives me an opportunity to do that. The Vedas are Shabda Pramana. Shabda is sound. The Vedas are only a means of knowledge when unfolded by the Guru. This is very important to know. The Vedas do not become a Pramanam unless and until it is unfolded by a competent Guru. And so if I go and pick up the Rig Veda from the market tomorrow, which is not possible, but if I do that, it's not going to make any difference. I'm not going to understand a thing. The Vedas have to be unfolded by the Guru because it is Mukham Pramana. It is a Pramana that is imparted by the sound. And it falls upon my ears. And then one day I utter the same sound and it falls upon somebody else's ears. And only in the manner in which I unfold it, I have to understand the tradition. I have to be part of the Guru Shishya Parampara in order to understand the import, in order to understand the purport and the teachings of the Vedas. For a layman, a lot of Westerners have made this mistake. During the time of the Britishers, we had these Indologists, we had Max Muller and we had all these people. They would just suddenly write a commentary and without understanding the Vedas. So I'll just give a brief address on it. There was one guy, I forgot his name, but he heard the mantra Purnamadav Purnamadam Purnaat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. This is the Purnamadav Shanti mantra from the Vedas. He translated it like this. This is the whole, that is the whole. From the whole comes the whole. If you take away the whole remains. If you add the whole will always be there. And what is there is the whole. Om, peace, 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 peace. This is how he translated it. And he found it absurd. He said that the Upanishads are the mindless, childish prattlings of an infantile mind. This is what he said of our Vedas because he didn't understand it correctly. And so it is very important to know how to interpret the Lakshata, the implied meaning. It is very important to know which are Vachyata, which are Lakshata. And only the competent Guru, the Guru who has been part of the Parampara, can impart this teaching to us. So I just want to make that caveat that the Vedas are a Pramanam only when unfolded by the Guru, nobody else. Now we'll discuss the qualifications of a Guru another time, but so far this should suffice. So there's another question from Gujan. What opinion does a person who can't join a school have to understand these teachings? I don't exactly follow. Can you elaborate upon your question? Like, you can just speak it out if you want.
The microphone is on hold.
It's working. I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just mean to say, see, you say that we need a guru to, qualified guru to understand these teachings. Now, I as a person cannot join a school right now. My time and life does not allow me to join a school and understand or learn from like a guru. So what option do I have if I really want to understand, the teachings of the Vedas and Vedanta?
That's a very good question. It's a very relevant question, and it's a question that a lot of people have. And I'm grateful that you asked this as well, because think of it this way. You already have an inclination for the Vedas, right? You already have an inclination, a deep respect and a deep necessity to learn it. So
Yeah.
you already approach the teachings in some aspect. You are already part of the teaching right now. we have different gurus from our Gurukulam, your Swamiji, who are even on Facebook. We have a lot of acharyas who are there online. You have a lot of acharyas you can give a phone call to. So, of course, absolutely it is preferred that you stay in front of your guru and he's imparting it live to you, face to face. But if that option is not available, we have to take the next best option, right? We have to weigh our choices. So if that option is not there, then you go to the next option, which is okay, chalo, maybe I can give a phone call to the guru, maybe I can clarify some of the doubts. So much of the teaching of Swami Paramatmanda ji also is available on the internet. Like yesterday, I posted a link to you, right? So all the 16 lectures are there. You can listen to those lectures. If there are any doubts, you can call the acharya, you can call the teacher, you can say that, hey, this is the question I have. There are so many acharyas who will respond to you by email as well. So it is actually a misconception that the only way to learn from a guru is to learn face by face. Yes, I agree that that is the best option you have. But uh, in case that option is absent, you have to take the next best. So, you are in good hands as far as the teaching of Vedanta goes, because, I've already shared the lectures of Swami Paramatmanda ji. There's a live link which I can post in which people can maybe access it as well. And these lectures are publicly available. If there are any doubts arising from that, then those doubts can be clarified. So when a person listens to the lectures, that is called Shravanam. Or when a person reads or listens, whichever they prefer. And when a person, after listening, let's say you go to college, now your teacher or whoever gives a set of talks. After the talks, you'll also have some doubts because there may not be that intellectual resolution in your mind yet. And so when you resolve the intellect, when you resolve the doubts, that is called mananam. So the questions always proceed once the teaching is over. So the option is always available. So I encourage every one of you to explore that option and to not be dissuaded by not having a live guru in front of you. Because if the Ashram Vidya Gurukulam is in Rishikesh, I cannot expect everybody to go there every day. It is just a harsh fact that the people who live there are maybe slightly, they have a better karma, I guess. I don't know, but we have to make the best of our situation. So, Dilipji, can you ask your question?
Yeah, I have posted me. There are many thought processes like Advaita, Dvaita, Visishtadvaita, and ISKCON. So where exactly they do differ?
I would not really want to go there because it might turn a lot of people off, but let me do it anyway. There's nothing wrong in being a little controversial. For me, as far as our parampara goes, Advaita Vedanta is the Vedas. There is no other, everything else I would say is not a loyal interpretation for the Vedas teach. I'll give you an example, okay?
Okay.
You take a Mahavakya like Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. How can you misinterpret that? How can anybody not get that? It is beyond me. It is beyond my understanding. If I say I am Brahman, it is a very obvious fact. It is what it is mentioned in the Yajurveda, right? It is part of the, I think, Shringeri Matham also, the motto, Aham Brahmasmi.
Yeah.
Okay, chalo, you have one vakya could be wrong. I'm not saying it is, but let's give the benefit of the doubt that one vakya could be a lakshayata, not a vachyata. Take Tattvamasi, you are that. I am Atma Tattvamasi. This Atma, Brahman, that you are. Chalo, let's see, even this could be wrong. Heard? Sarvam Khalveda Brahma. This is from the Chandogya Upanishad, which is part of the Samaveda. Sarvam Khalveda Brahma. All that there is Brahman. Now let us use logic over here. If all that there is only Brahman, then is there anything which is not Brahman, including myself? No, it's not possible. If everything is Brahman, but I am not Brahman, then Brahman is not everything, basically. So let's say this is also wrong. Then you have Prajnanam Brahma, consciousness is Brahman. Chalo, let's see if that is wrong. Then you have Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Existence. Whatever exists is existence. Existence is the very substratum, and we will actually go into deep detail about this in the Atma chapter. But just as an overview, everything exists, has its basis in existence. Everything that you can ever be conscious of has its basis in consciousness. And Anantam, which is limitlessness. So, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Brahman is limitlessness, then how can it not be you? So when the Vedas say that you are Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, and then they say that Brahman is limitlessness, Brahman is everything, Sarvam Khalveda Brahma, so on and so forth. There's no way to misinterpret it. Now I'll tell you where the misinterpretation happened. Okay? This is controversial. If you guys are not Advaitins, say close your ears. So Shankaracharya explained the Chandogya Upanishad, I am Atma Tat Tvam Asi. Now I am not the Sanskrit expert, but this much I know. The and if you put together, the ending of a word and the beginning of a next word, if you join them as a sandhi, then you have a. So what one acharya, I don't want to give names, one acharya, what he did was, I am Atma Tattvamasi. He divided the I am Atma, the Atma ka A part, the A part of the Atma, he divided them to A plus A. So Atma Atatvamasi, you are not that. You are not Brahman. So the entire teaching of the Vedas was twisted 180 degrees. And then that became Dvaita. It became dualism. It became Jeev, Ishvara, Shrishti, difference. That they are all different from each other. I am,
Paramatma.
sorry?
No. I was saying that difference made Jivatma, Paramatma. That they made many differentiations. Right?
See, exactly. Now, I'll probably touch more upon this in the Atma topic, since a lot of people may lose track. But let me address it. It's a good question. Again, it's a good thing you asked. When you say Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam, you're basically saying that they are one. Jivatma and Paramatma are not different from each other. But here, the misconception that there is something separate called a Jivatma, there is something separate called Paramatma, and they are different from each other, that is a misconception. And so the Mahavakya Tattvamasi is an equation. When you say A equals B, that equal to shows you that A and B are identical. They are not only identical, they are the same. So, the whole purpose of the Vedas is to show you that so far you believe that you are the small limited being. And I apologize to everyone, we are going like 6 minutes over time, but whoever wants to stay, it's a good conversation we're having, so please stick around. You take yourself to be a jiva, you take yourself to be a limited, a restricted, a small, a very confined entity. You take yourself to have all these problems of the world. And then you look at this Bhagwan, this completely exalted, higher, supreme power, and you take him to be like the ultimate truth of what is out there. The job of the Vedas is not to make you a servant. The job of the Vedas is to free you. In the beginning, you start with bhakti. In the beginning, you start with the difference between Ishvara and Jiva. But ultimately, you arrive at the fact that I am that. Now, I will quote one thing from the Gita. Arjuna is asking Krishna Bhagwan the four types of bhaktas. Like, what are the different categories of bhaktas? So Krishna Bhagwan says the first, Ardhati, Jignasu and Gyani. The first bhakta is the guy who comes to me to make business deals. Ki acha chalo, my son, he failed in college. If you make him pass, I will come to the temple every Thursday, Tuesday, whatever. If my husband's business becomes successful, then I will come and I'll donate 100 rupees to the temple. So this is the business deal type of bhakta, that if you do this, then I'll do this for you. First of all, Bhagwan doesn't need your favor. Bhagwan is already complete. Nothing that you can add is going to glorify Bhagwan any further. But still, Krishna Bhagwan is so kind. Our Vedas are so kind that they say that is fine. It is better that you make this deal with me than to go and hurt somebody else or whatever, right? So if you are making a transaction with me, that is okay. It is good. I like you. You are a good bhakta. So Krishna Bhagwan says that this bhakta, business deal type bhakta. The second bhakta is a little better. He says that I go to Bhagwan when I'm unhappy also. I go to Bhagwan when I'm happy also. Whenever I want anything, I go to Bhagwan. Whenever I have something else, I go to Bhagwan. Whatever, I have a good, healthy relationship with Bhagwan. I have an emotional relationship with Bhagwan. So he says this bhakta is even better than that first guy. Though the first guy is not bad, he will clarify that. I like the first guy also. I like the second guy more. Then he says the third guy, he's reached a level, he's reached a stage where he does not want things from me. He no longer kind of gnaws after these materialistic desires. He's reached a plane, a plateau where he has some emotional stability. He's reached a level where he's able to seek knowledge. And so this bhakta is a jignasu. The jignasu is one who wants to understand me. So Bhagwan says this guy is dearer to me than the previous two also. This guy wants to understand who I am. And guess what? By understanding who Bhagwan is, you understand who you are. Because you and Bhagwan are the same. Now, Bhagwan says, the best bhakta, the highest bhakta is the Jnani bhakta. Why? Because he is me. This is a very important statement. The Jnani is me. That is what Bhagwan says. The Jnani is my favorite because he is me. The Jnani knows that he and Bhagwan are the same. And that's why he is his favorite bhakta. And he is like, this guy is the best of all. So, even your level of bhakti will rise from Dvaita, where you look upon Ishvara as different from you. And it will ultimately move on to Vishishya Dvaita, which is like qualified non-dualism. And finally, ultimately, you have to move on to Advaita, which is the very core, the very substance, the very import of the entire Vedas. The whole purpose of the Vedas is to elevate you as a sadhaka to assimilate Advaita Jnanam. Advaita Jnanam alone is moksha. You can never be completely free if you're looking at yourself as Ishvara and as the world as different. You will always be small, you will always be limited, you will always be restricted. There will always be something that is confining you to a smaller proportion. So only Advaita alone is moksha. That is it. So I'm not disregarding the other teachings. They are essential because different people are at different levels, and different people. Some people need Dvaita, some people need Visheshadvaita, and some people need Advaita. But ultimately, I will also make the statement that you have to climb from Dvaita to Visheshadvaita ultimately to come to Advaita, and that is why you have these different schools of thoughts. Now I see one more question that you asked on the left side. You were talking about 6 basic schools, right?
Like six basic schools. Yes, I mean each philosophy. Advaita.
So these don't form the 6 schools as we traditionally know them. The 6 schools are different. I'll give a brief overview of this because I don't know when else I can do that. I probably will forget in the future, so I'll just talk about it now. Uh, First, of course, you have you have 6 schools. You have 12 schools actually, not 6 schools. You have 6 schools which are Astika, and you have 6 schools which are Nastika. Nastika means the ones which do not accept the Vedas as a pramana. And a lot of people mistranslate this. Astika doesn't mean theist. Nastika doesn't mean atheist. We don't use such words. These are like very silly words which I encourage not to use. Nastika simply means one who does not accept Vedas. Astika means one who accepts the Vedas. You can not accept Ishvara and you can still accept the Vedas. You can accept Ishvara and you can still reject the Vedas. You see what I'm saying? So Astika and Nastika are better categories to define us. 6 schools Astika, 6 schools Nastika. Let's start with Nastika. The Nastika schools, 4 schools of Buddhism. You have Madhyamika, you have Yogacara, you have Shunyavada, and if I am not mistaken, you have Kshanik Vijnanavada. I do not claim to have knowledge of the schools of Buddhism, so I'm just going to list the names and a brief understanding of them. Let's take Shunyavada. Shunyavada Buddhists say that existence is nothingness, existence is Shunya, zero. The Kshanika Vijnanavada Buddhists say that it is momentary, consciousness is momentary, it blinks in and out of existence, like blinker, on, off, like that. So, today you go to sleep, tomorrow a new consciousness is there. You go to sleep again, a new consciousness comes, and so on. So this is called the Kshanik Vijnanavada. I do not know enough about the Madhyamaka and the Yogacara schools to talk about them, so I can't, but just understand that these are 4 schools of Buddhism. Then you have Jainism. Jainism is again divided into 2 categories, which you have Shvetambars and Digambars. Then you have subcategories like Terapanthis and all, but let's not get into that. So you have one school of Jainism. Let's just take one for now. Then you have Charvaka. Charvaka are today what you would call materialist people. Charvaka means sweet talker. They talk very sweetly. They say that, oh, you have only one life. You must have heard that catchphrase, YOLO, you only live once. It's very popular.
Yeah.
Young kids, bachas, they'll type YOLO, like you only live once, do whatever you want, go crazy, go do whatever you want. There's no consequence, there's no karma, there's nothing. So these are the Charvaka type of people, the materialists who believe that you have only one life. Do whatever you want. You want to break something, you want to eat something, you want to eat sweets, you get diabetes, it's okay. Everyone's going to die one day, so you'll also die. Big deal. What's a big deal? So this is like the Charvaka type of people. Ki live for the day and don't give a damn about what's there tomorrow or what's there in the next life. Charvakas also did not accept any of the other means of knowledge. They only accepted the Pratiksha Pramanam, which is a little odd because a lot of science falls under the other pramanas, right? Let's take a small fact. If you talk about the atom, can you see an atom? No. Can you hear it? No, you can't. You require inference, you require presumption, you require the other means of knowledge in order to arrive at the knowledge of science. So science is a combination of all the other pramanas except for the Vedas. So these Charvakas are no longer there amongst us. They've taken a different form, but the Charvaka school of thought itself is extinct. So, I always joke with, I think I joked with Karthikji once that, he told me that Charvakas don't accept inference, Anumana also. So if they see smoke, they will not accept that there is fire until you see the fire. fire. That's why they got extinct. They didn't see the fire. So anyway, so you have Charvaka. Then you have, so I covered 4 schools of Buddhism, Jainism and Charvaka. These are the 6 schools which are Nastika, which do not accept the Vedas. Now you have 6 schools which are Astikas. You have yoga, the school of yoga, philosophy of yoga, which is by Patanjali Rishi. Everybody knows Patanjali. These accept the Vedas, but they have a different interpretation of it. Then you have Purva Mīmānsaka. Oh, no, let's get to Purva Mīmānsaka. You have Nyaya, which is logicians. Then you have Vaisheshikas, which are the atomic theorists. The atomic theorists were the first people who talked about the atoms, who talked about discrete particles, who talked about nature being very discrete. So they talked about the Anu and the Parmanu, which are like the
Kannada Maharshi.
Kannada Maharshi, exactly. So there was a lot of good physics and etc. things present within the Vaisheshika school, and we are very indebted to them for a lot of our traditional embellishments. The Nyaya, I didn't really expand upon it, but Nyaya is logic. It talks about all sorts of logical things. It tries to arrive at the understanding of the universe through logic. It was a very powerful school. So you have Nyaya, you have Vaisheshika, you have Samkhya. You have Samkhya is basically talking about a duality in terms of Purusha and Prakriti. Purusha they see as consciousness, Prakriti they see as nature. Purusha and Prakriti is like that dualism that they talk about, and everything is constituted of the 3 guna, Rajas and Tamas. So the interplay, the mixture, the dance, the cosmic dance of these 3 gunas form everything in our universe. So that is what the Samkhyavadis believe. So we covered 4: Yogacara, Vaisheshika, Samkhyavadis and Nyaya. And finally, we have 2. One is Purva Mīmānsaka, who accept only the first portion of the Vedas, which is the Karma Kanda. They only accept the theory of karma. They believe that everything that is there in this whole world can only be gained through action, through karma. If you have to get moksha, that also you have to do some karma for it. If you have to do something, you have to do some yajna for it. You do some yajna for that. So the Karma Kandins, they accepted only karma. They did not accept the Upanishadic portion of the Vedas. Now finally we have the last and probably the synthesis of everything else put together, the ultimate teaching, which is the Uttar Mīmānsa. And that accepts the entire Vedas as a pramanam, including the Jnana Kanda. So while the Karma Kandins say that karma gains you moksha and so on, the Jnana Kandins understand that we need Karma Kanda in order to purify you, in order to get you up to that level where you're prepared to be part of this teaching, to understand this teaching. And then finally it is knowledge alone that liberates you. So this is the evolution. So you have the 6 schools which are Nastika, and you have 6 schools which are Astika. You have 12 schools. And Shankaracharya, obviously, he debated everybody. He went around the whole country from region to region, and whoever the best acharya of that philosophy was, he would debate. And Shankaracharya would always emerge victorious, because Vedanta is so clear, it is so concise, it is so logical, it is so sensible that you cannot but accept it. And so whoever, that is why we are so grateful, because during that time the Bauddhas and the Jainas, they took over the whole country. And they say that Yatha Raja Tatha Praja, right? So that time we had Chandragupta Maurya, who was a Jain. So obviously if he was a Jain, his public will be Jain, his kingdom will be Jain. Then you had Ashoka, who was also Buddhist. And so, between Jains and Buddhists, we were pretty divided. There were very few people who were Vedikas. Shankaracharya debated all of these people, and again we came back to a Vedika India, Vedika Bharat. And so we are very grateful that, we have this teaching today because of him. Because he wrote so many commentaries, because he participated in these discussions and so on. So, just a overview of the 12 schools.
Okay.
We've already exceeded 20 minutes, but it's good. This video is getting recorded, so if people have to go to sleep or whatever, then we can turn it off, or we can continue the discussion and people can view it afterwards. What do you say? Are there any other questions?
No, my doubt is clear.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it is related to this or not, but then I often have come across this thing called Kriya Yoga. What is Kriya Yoga?
I wouldn't even go there, honestly. So this So sorry if you are following it, but let me put it this way.
I don't know. Actually, I've just read it at certain places. I don't even know what that is. But then, out of curiosity, I would want to know.
In a way, I can congratulate you for not knowing what it is, because it is easier to start on a blank slate than to know something wrong and then to erase it and then to learn something right again. During our present century, okay, in fact, it's a good topic you brought up, and now I need to talk about who a guru is, because this will really explain why certain sources are not correct. The Mundaka Upanishad defines a guru as a Brahma Shotra and a Brahma Nishtha. Brahma Shotra is one who understands the entire teaching of Brahma, which is the import of the Vedas, more or less. And a Brahma Nishtha is one who is assimilated this, who is firm in this knowledge. So, if I say something doesn't mean I necessarily have assimilated it. I can say I am Brahman doesn't mean I'm a Jnani. But at least if I'm able to impart the teaching correctly, that is enough for the student. I do not need to be a Jnani in order for the student to benefit, right? So the Guru, the Guru Lakshana, the Guru quality given in the Upanishad is that he must be a Brahma Shotra at least. A Brahma Shotra means that he has to be a part of the Guru Shishya Parampara. He has to know all the modes, all the methods, all the ways in which the teaching is to be taught, and also he has to understand it perfectly. How do I know I understood perfectly? Because I need to go to a guru for that. I need to gauge my understanding in front of the guru and to see if my understanding is correct or if my understanding is erroneous. If my guru, how does he understand what he knows correctly? Because he has a guru. How does his guru know? Because he has a guru. Now you see where I'm going. You need a Guru Shishya Parampara in order for this knowledge to be correct. Suppose there's a break in the Parampara, and suppose you say, hey, I don't have a guru, but I'm going to start teaching everyone. It won't work. Because how do you know what you know is correct? You don't. There's nothing to compare against, because you haven't been handed the knowledge. You haven't been authorized to teach. You haven't been asked to share. You haven't gained the prakriyas. So the prakriyas are the method. It is very important to have the right methodologies to unfold the teaching, because if you miss the methodologies, the teaching will not work for you. The guru needs to understand the student. The guru needs to understand the teaching. The guru needs to be firm in the teaching, and the guru needs to be sampradayak. Sampradayak means part of the parampara, part of the sampradaya. Parampara is a lineage. Look at parampara as a string, as a thread. And sampradaya are like the things which are passed down that thread, down that lineage. Sampradaya is the teaching, and the parampara is the lineage of that teaching. You have to be sampradayak, you have to be paramparik. You cannot have the sampradaya without the parampara, because if there's a cut in the string, who's going to give you the knowledge? Nobody. So these days we have a lot of gurus, and it has become a kind of like a modern profession that people claim to know the Vedas. They say, oh, you don't need the scriptures. Oh, I've invented some new method. Believe me, if there was something beautiful and wonderful to be invented, Krishna Bhagavan would have already talked about it in the Gita. He says, Dvivida Nishtha. There are only two Nishtha. Excuse me. There are only two committees, the path of the Karma Yogi and the path of the Jnana Yogi. Now you have all sorts of like this yoga, you have Kriya Yoga, you have this yoga, that yoga. They don't have validity. They do not have Pramanam status. They do not have the authority of the Parampara. So, what is a Guru Shishya Parampara? I do not know the verse, but it says, it starts with Bhagwan. Whether you call it Narayana or you call him Shiva, doesn't matter. Then it goes to Vashishta. Then it goes down further. It goes to I'm missing people in the lineage, but it goes to like Vyasa. It goes to Shukracharya. It goes to Gaudapadacharya. It goes to Bhagavatapadacharya. It goes to Shankaracharya. It goes to Sureshwaracharya, Padmapadacharya, Hastamalakacharya, and so on. And so this whole lineage we have the lineage in front of us. We know our entire tradition. If you ask me who my guru was, my guru will know who his guru was, and so on. But this Kriya Yoga and all, they are kind of like neo-spiritual movements. And I don't mean to discourage anybody here. But since you asked, and since we are part of this Advaita Vedanta session, I just want to clear that not everything is legitimate. You have to gain legitimacy in order to teach legitimate teachings. And if you're not part of the Guru Shishya Parampara, tomorrow you cannot just say that, hey, I have invented something wonderful and new. I've gone to USA, I've written an autobiography of myself, and now I have a new path for you to follow. So, you will find a lot of people come to USA, and Americans don't know much, because they are like Westerners and they don't have that exposure to the teaching. And so even if you teach something wrong, it becomes a popular construct. And you must have noticed that when something comes to the US, and it goes back to India, people in India lap it up very greedily. Yoga became popular in India only after it became popular in US. In US, all these yoga studios got created, and so now everybody does yoga as it's an exercise. They don't do the yama, they don't do the niyama, they don't do the different exercises and upasanas that are associated with yoga. They look at yoga as an exercise, as a physical exercise to look good, to feel better. They call it a stress buster. So this is what has happened. Like when you have like different schools, you have like Kriya Yoga, then you have Kundalini Yoga, and all these things have been created. My only suggestion would be that stick to a traditional parampara. If it's not Advaita Vedanta, even Dvaita, stick to that. But don't fall for the wrong things. So um, I forgot to wish everyone, but today is the third day of Navratri, so happy Navratri. I wish you and your family the best wishes for the year. And maybe we can just close off on the Durga Sukta, because the first 3 days of Navratri are Durga oriented, and the next 3 are for Saraswati, and the last 3 are for Lakshmi. So let's chant the Durga Sukta, and then we'll close off the session, because it's been like almost 1.5 hours. ॐ जातवेदसे सुनवामसो ममराति यतो निदहाति वेदः स नः पर्षदति दुर्गानि विश्वानावेव सिन्धुं दुरितात्यग्निः तामग्निवर्णां तपसा ज्वलन्तीं वैरोचनीं कर्मफलेषु जुष्टां दुर्गां देवीगुं शरणमहं प्रपद्ये सुतरसि तरसे नमः अग्ने त्वं पार्यानव्यो अस्मान् स्वस्ति भरति दुर्गानि विश्वा पूष्य पृथ्वी बहुलान उर्वी भवातो कायतनयाय संयोः विश्वानिनो दुर्गः जातवेद सिन्धुमनावादुरितातिपर्षि अग्नेय त्रिवन् सागरनानो ओस्माकं बोधविता तनूना आम् प्रतनाजतकुं सहमान अग्रिकुं नेम परमात् सदस्तात् सनः पर्षदति दुर्गानि विश्वाशामद्देवो अतिदुरितात्यग्निः पतनोषिकमे देवद्वरेषु सनाच होता नव्यससत्सि स्वाञ्च आग्ने तनुमं पिप्रे स्वस्मभं सौभगमाय च स्व गोबिर्जष्टमयुजं निषित्कं तव इन्द्र विष्णुरनु संजरेम नाकस्य पृष्ठमपि संवसानो वैष्णवीं लोकैर्मादयन्ताम् ॐ कात्यायनाय विद्महे कन्याकुमारी धीमहि तन्नो दुर्गिः प्रचोदयात् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ. Thank you all. See you next week.
Okay.